Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're looking at another devblog, and it is for the LVT-4 40, and it looks like these new Battle Pass vehicles are definitely the ones which were on the dev server. So we've already had the PT, we now have the LVT-4 40, and I'm guessing the PT 7657 will be announced pretty soon. I'd be very surprised if that isn't on the Battle Pass. Also at the same time, we do have another dev server today, so if you are interested in that, make sure to check it out. There isn't too much new stuff, unfortunately, but hopefully can check out the maps on the dev server so we can have a look around them. The LVT-440 is going to be in the French tech tree, it's going to be a rank 2, and it's also going to be premium with light tank status, meaning that it'll get itself probably scouting, which will be quite nice, and also has an interesting history. The LVT-440's history is a simple one, but also it took part in a lot of conflicts that generally a ton of vehicles don't actually in the game. So even though it has simple origins, it was used a lot by France. Basically, post-World War II, France possessed a ton of American vehicles in its service. Remember, obviously France was pretty devastated by the war, and they started rebuilding their military might, and they had a lot of aid from the Americans. They also used a lot of vehicles from even the Germans and rejigged them, or a lot of weaponry from the Germans, and made it into some other stuff. And one of the things that they had was a ton of LVTs from America, and these, along with other armored vehicles, were supplied to France as a short-term solution to be able to rebuild the French military after the war. And during the Indochina War of the early 1950s, the LVTs in French service were modified to carry the 40mm Bofors anti-air gun, as it was shown that it was actually doing better against ground targets than the standard 37mm cannon. So this wasn't designed to just go after air targets. It was actually more designed to pump people on the ground. And these modified French LVTs also participated in the Suez Crisis of 1956, which also marked their final operational use. So these things definitely got themselves around the place and were used effectively in many different areas, which is pretty awesome. So with this LVT-440 in-game, the Bofors that it has on top of it is incredibly powerful. If you didn't know which gun this is, it's on stuff like the AMX-13 DCA in-game. It's a very high fire rate Bofors gun, the 40mm. The RPM is incredibly high on the machine, and what this means is you can output a ton of shells very, very quickly. Now, also, the 40mm Bofors L60 has access to AP rounds, so this really is a multi-purpose gun. It is something that's going to be useful not just against air targets but also against ground targets. I feel like most of the time people are going to use this thing against ground targets instead of air. It also does get access to 250 cals, which is quite nice, and when it comes to its fully modeled self, the 50 cals I don't think will be that useful. They'll be okay for marking targets if you miss the scout, or maybe going after aircraft, but the muzzle velocity difference between the 50 cal and between the 40mm pretty much means that it's going to be really hard to use both guns to attack something. At the same time, the LVT chassis itself is huge, and that's going to be one of the big weaknesses of this vehicle. It's all well and good being a light tank, and all well and good having scouting, but when you are the size of a literal building, you have a little bit of a problem being able to hide yourself. So being a passive scout is very hard to do. So you're going to have to end up being forced into aggressive scout situations, and you don't have the firepower compared to a lot of other vehicles, and you're going to get torn apart. This LVT chassis does seem to have some extra armor on it, but when I checked it on the dev server, on the last dev server, the extra armor was very, very weak and obviously designed against low caliber weapons, so stuff like machine guns and things like that. So against tank cannons, I highly doubt it's actually going to do anything. So it'll still get chopped up. You also lose the two guys in the back, the machine gunners on this LVT, because there's no 50 cals, so survivability from that point of view decreases. It also becomes open-topped as well, so it'll get overpressured, which is very fun. So the survivability of this vehicle is really low, and because it's absolutely massive, that is a huge problem. But the gun itself is nice, and also the mobility of the vehicle is not too bad either. It's also amphibious, so you can, bounce around the place and have a little bit of fun, maybe try a few awkward angles to be able to go in. And also at the same time, it's in the French tech tree at rank 2 and a premium, so it's going to be useful for researching rank 1, 2, and 3. The French have been really well looked after when it comes to the Battle Pass stuff. They've got the P39, they got the EBR last one, and now they're getting another premium tank in this one as well. So it's really good stuff for France, and I've got to say, the French tech tree overall is a fantastic one. The ground tech tree is probably my favorite when it comes to the game. There is an issue with rank 1. Rank 1 is absolutely trash, but once you get past it, all of the other ranks do feel very nice to play. And also, at rank 2, you already have a killer lineup. You have a B1 Biss, you have a Stuart, and you also have a Crusader. And I'm wondering if this thing is going to fit in that lineup, or it's going to be higher BR or lower BR. But if it fits in that lineup, then you've just got an extra tool in your case to be able to deal with vehicles going forward. So for me, I'm happy to see this thing. It's a weird and wonky vehicle. It's one that you're not normally going to see in tech trees, so for events and battle passes, I think it's perfect. Also, the theme of this battle pass, we're going to have to see if it is confirmed in the future, but I think it's a really interesting idea, the amphibious nature of a lot of these vehicles. I'm wondering what the aircraft is, actually. That's the one thing that so far is missing when it comes to the Battle Pass stuff. We've seen everything else, and it seems like at least the ones which were in the files before for the general stuff is the ones that were in the files before are now on the dev server itself, so it's none of them, like the Jaguar GR1A or the MiG-21 which was there, so I'm guessing it's something else. We'll have to see what got added to the files. Overall, I'm happy to see this thing. It's really nice to see another vehicle for France, and France has a ton of weird and wonky prototypes or weird and wonky vehicles that they used post-World War II because of the fact that they had issues during the Second World War, and the fact that they can be seen in War Thunder in such a really interesting and cool way is only cool. It's as simple as that. I hope we see more of these designs, and with this coming and the EBR coming this update, I'm sure many people who play the French tech tree are going to be very happy. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Barine, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.